Hello Python peoples, it's Bruce here with a video demonstration of something from chapter 3 that you can find on page 62 of your textbook. It's called Accumulating Results, and it's an example on factorials. The first thing I'm going to do is run it to show you how it works. In fact, before I even do that, I am just going to bring up an editor here and we'll talk about factorials, okay? That's HTML. So let's talk about factorials, okay? If I have 6 factorial, that's the way we write it mathematically, right? That's going to equal, right, the factorial is going to equal 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 3, yes, times 2, and then optionally times 1, but anything times 1, it's just itself. So there's 6 factorial, right? So 6 times 5 is 30, right? 30 times 4, right, is 120. 120 times 3 is what? 360, okay? 360 times 2 is 720, and 720 times 1, right, is 720. Okay, so what would 7 factorial be, right? 7 factorial, we just add in here 7 times, 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So you're probably thinking to yourself, right, how the heck can you do this using the knowledge that you've gained so far, right, or the topics we've studied so far in CTEC 121? So let's go through it. Okay, let me run it and prove to you that it works, and then we'll go through it. Okay, beach ball. There it is at the bottom here. Okay, actually, let me clear the window out and clear the window out here and run it again so you can see it from the top. Okay, so 6 factorial, right, should be 720. And what we're going to build here is I'm going to show you through each iteration, right, of the loop that we're going to use. Okay, I'm going to show you just what I did before, right? We had right, 6 times where are we? Factorial. Oh, here we are. Okay, 6 and the current value of fact was 1. Okay, so that's when we first go into the loop, and then 5 and 6 and 4 and 30, etc. Okay, let me just see what I did here. I should have printed the factorial after, so let me just fix that. Don't mind me, okay? Don't mind me. Just carry on here while I fix this. Okay, carry on, because we're going to write it from scratch, okay? So I'm going to save it and run it one more time so you can see it. 6 factorial. Okay, so the current value of factor is 6. That's the first time we go through the loop. And 6 times 1, right, is what? 6. And then we do 6 times 5 is 30. Then we do 30 times 4 is 120. And then 120 times 3 is 360. And then 360 times 2 is 720. So that's how we do our factorial. So let's write this together. Okay, let's write this together. We'll put a comment at the top, factorials. Okay, I'll just say chapter 3 with some comments. I'll define a function. Let's just call it factorial, okay? That's a good name for this function, okay, because that's what it's going to do. And let's add in our call to factorial, right, to call the function at the bottom. Let's get that out of the way. So the first thing we need to do is have our user, and let's just say our user's name is Gail, okay? So we're going to have Gail enter in a number, okay? So num, that's just a variable name, eval, input. You should all be pros at this by now. Enter a number that you want to calculate the factorial of, okay? And we'll put a colon, we'll do that. Okay. So there we go. Let me make the window bigger, okay? So you can see all the code. Okay, there we are. So there is the input. And now we need to do a loop. So I'm going to use the variable factor instead of I, okay? So I'm going to say for factor in range, okay? Now, we need a range of numbers 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? And if you remember from week 2, right, and from the type ahead help we're getting here, we want to start at the number that Gail enters, right? Okay, make believe it's 6. And then we want to go all the way down to 1, and we want to step down one number through each iteration of the loop. Okay, so we're in the loop now, and we're going to say fact, because that's going to be what we're going to use to accumulate our factorials. Okay, just a variable equals the current value of fact, because remember, we're doing 6 times 5 is 30, and then 30 times, I forgot what the next number was. 30 times 4 is 120, etc. So what we need to do here, okay, and let's look at the statement here, is this variable fact is going to be accumulating through each iteration of the loop the prior value of fact times the current factor. Okay, so when we first start off, fact is what? Oh, we need to define a fact to be something because we're trying to use it here and we don't have it defined. So we'd get a name error if we try to run it. So outside of the loop, we are going to define the variable fact to the value of 1. Okay, not 0, because we don't want to do multiplication times 0 here. 0 is not involved in calculating factorials, so we're going to set it to 1. So if you look at the first iteration of the loop here, if Gail enters in 6, factor is going to be 6. So we're going to have fact, which is 1 times 6 is 6. So fact is going to be assigned the value of 6. Okay. The next time we go through the loop, factor is 5, and we're going to have 5 here times the value of fact, which was 6, which is going to be 30, and then fact is now going to become 30. Okay, so this is called an accumulation pattern in programming. Okay, so this variable is constantly being overwritten with the new value here. Okay, so that's really all there is to it. And I know you have a problem, or you may not have a problem depending upon when you hear this video, but I think you do have a problem that involves summing the natural numbers, right, that someone enters. So that problem is very similar to this problem here. Okay, so at the end we're going to say print the factorial. Actually, we'll just say the number that Gail entered here, num, right, comma, and we'll use singles, factorial is, right, and then we'll put in fact, because that's the factorial. So let me save this, and I'll call it fact2, because I did one earlier for practice. And let's do run. Okay, and we're actually, let me just close the screen here. I wish that Python idle had a way to clear the screen, but it doesn't. So, ready? Enter a number that you want to calculate the factorial of, 6, right? And there's our result, 720, right? So just to show you, right, the way this works is I can print out the value of fact. Okay, I'm going to say that fact equals fact. Okay, so that's going to equal 1 the first time. And then I'm going to say print, right, factor, which is the current iterator in the loop, equals, right, factor. Okay, so you can see how this thing grows here. Okay, ready? 6. So you can see how it grows. Okay, so that's how the factorial works. And the biggest thing to note here is this statement right here: fact equals fact times factor. Okay, fact is being used from the prior iteration or the initial value that it was set to, and it continues to be reset during each iteration of the loop. Okay, I hope this video helped. If you did in fact watch it and made it this far, please leave a message in Slack letting me know you left it there. And I apologize for the dogs barking, but they're dogs.